Let's speak to Patrick Mathidi now, as portfolio manager from Aluwani Capital Partners. Thank you for being with us. What is the impact on pockets, firstly, and then on the larger economy here?
Good evening, and thanks for having me. Look, the impact is definitely negative. So essentially what you're finding is, people are having to spend more on transport and transport-related costs as opposed to other, essential expenditure. And as a result, you're getting squeezed with very little income growth that we have seen over the last while. Just to put things into perspective, for the year to date, the petrol price has gone up by about 25%. If you look at the average incomes, if you've had an increase in salary of about inflation, you're doing very well. Inflation is about 6%, give or take. So you can see that that gap is quite massive, meaning that each month you're having to find extra, areas where you can cut expenditure to can then continue with your local commuting, whether to work or any other activity.
There are global concerns about the oil price affecting fuel prices across the world, concerns that this will lead to more inflation. We're seeing central banks raising interest rates, concerns even that the US may go into a recession. How justified are those bigger concerns, and what does it mean for South Africa in 3 months, 4 months, say?
You are right. I mean, the concerns are global. So we are seeing, very, very similar, trends happening across the globe. And there's two things currently at play. One is, and we've seen this come through over the last few years or so. We have not seen massive capital going into new sources of energy, especially fossil fuels, as in oil. Instead, we have seen this transition away from dirty fuel into cleaner sources of energy. But that transition has been, fairly slow, meaning that with COVID and now with the war in Ukraine, we have seen, demand starting to pick up and actually run away ahead of our supply that is currently under constraint. So the demand-supply equation is currently out of kilter globally, right? So not only in the oil market, but also in gas, which is very prevalent in the European markets. So as a result, South Africa is a net importer of oil. So we're having to deal with those global factors and that we then import into our economy. And unfortunately, we have very little, cushioning for whatever happens globally in the form of either interest rates going up or even our currency also weakening, which then means that, we see this accelerated, petrol price increases as we have seen of late.
Government has done something. This R1.50 relief in terms of the fuel levy means that we were cushioned from an even bigger blow. We could have seen petrol going up by around R4. Do you think government should be doing more?
Absolutely. I think that more can be done. But unfortunately, with this kind of challenges, there are no quick solutions, that we can just flick and then next month, we in a much better place. So if you just look at the petrol price, about 55% or so of that is what it cost us to import from overseas. And then you've got another 25%, which is just pure taxes, right, which goes to the fiscus, and then you've got the remainder, which is largely the margins that we pay for refining and also for the retailers. So each time you fill up at your local filling station, there's a margin that the owner of the filling station actually takes. So a bigger chunk of that petrol price actually is taxes, and those taxes I think is time for the government to have a look at, because I don't think they are being well spent. They're not going in the right places, and perhaps it's time to also look at other sources of taxes that are a lot less punitive, especially on the poor. Because if you look at the petrol price, it affects everyone, and disproportionately so to the lower income groups who have to actually travel, given the very constrained, public transport system that we have in the country. So I think it is time definitely for the finance minister, has been talking about it for the last while, to actually come through with a more credible plan, which is a lot more sustainable as opposed to this 1 or 2 month reprieve that we're getting, such that people can plan and hopefully have a much better cushion, which is a lot more sustained going forward.
So move away from fuel levies to something like a wealth tax, something linked to your high earnings, say?
I think something that is, proportionally affordable, to those who are being levied. Because if you think about it, the high income groups they want, they've got high incomes. Secondly, they do not always use, let's say, the taxis and the likes for transport purposes. Even more so now post-COVID, because a lot of people now work from home, but it's still the poor who still need to commute, to the place of work. And that's where, as a portion of the total income, transport costs are very, very high, as opposed to the sort of the middle to the high income people. So you need a more proportionally allocated tax burden, such that you're still getting the same outcome from a tax collection point of view, but the burden is a lot more bearable to those who can afford it, as opposed to the current system where it is the ones who earn the least who are actually feeling the burden a lot more than the ones who are actually earning more.
All right, we'll speak to Treasury in this hour, in fact, so you've given me something to put to them. Thank you very much. That was Patrick Mathidi, Portfolio Manager from Aluwani Capital Partners.